штучку знаешь? Нет, не знаю. Кастрюля? Нет, не кастрюля. Фигней заниматься вот нетрудно, понимаешь? Да, трудно вот, да, вот ты садишься, да, и что, ради чего все это вообще начиналось? Понимаешь, вот, да. Это все был про зеленый чай опять везде. Надоело уже. Наверное, по-разному. Хорошая, да.
The more we increase it, the more heavy-handed the smooshing process is going to get. Please remember this part. 2. We can also see, we can control.
У меня очень нормально. У меня все нормально, у меня все нормально. Нет, не знаю, вот это есть она. Ладно. Так, руку. Насколько впереди?
Control the strength of the transformation with this lambda parameter. As you see, the more we increase it, the more heavy-handed the smooshing process is going to get. Please control the strength of the transformation with this lambda parameter. As you see, the more we increase it, the more heavy-handed the smooshing process is going to get. Please remember this part. 2. We can also cubify selectively along different directions, or select parts of the directions, or select parts of the object that should be cubified differently. Okay. 3. We can even use it to fix flaws in the input 3D geometry. 4. This transformation precedes the geometry. This transformation procedure also takes into consideration the orientations. This means that we can perform it from different angles, which gives us a large selection of possible outputs for the same model. 5. It is fast and works on high-resolution geometry, and you see different settings for the lambda parameter here. That is the same parameter as we talked about before, the strength of the transformation. 6. We can also combine many of these features interactively until a desirable shape is found. 7 is about to come in a moment, but to appreciate what that is, we have to look at this. To perform what you have seen here so far, we have to minimize this expression. This first term says ARAP, as rigid as possible, which stipulates that whatever we do in terms of smooshing, it should preserve the fine local features. The second part is called the regularization term that encourages sparser, more axis-aligned solutions so we don't destroy the entire model during this process. The stronger this term is, the bigger say it has in the final results, which, in return, become more cube-like. So, how do we do that? Well, of course, with our trusty little lambda parameter. Not only that, but if we look at the appendix, it tells us that we can generalize this second regularization term for many different shapes. So here we are, finally, 7. It doesn't even need to be cubification, we can specify all kinds of polyhedra. Look at those gorgeous results. I love this paper. It is playful, it is elegant, it has utility, and it generalizes well. It doesn't care in the slightest what the current mainstream ideas are and invites us into its own little world. In summary, this will serve all your cubification needs, and turns out it might even fix your geometry and more. I would love to see more papers like this. In this series, I try to make people feel how I feel when I read these papers. I hope I have managed this time, but you be the judge. Let me know in the comments. This episode has been supported by Linode. Linode is the... Let me know in the comments. This episode has been supported by Linode. Linode is the world's largest independent cloud computing provider. They offer you virtual servers that make it easy and affordable to host your own app, site, project, or anything else in the cloud. Whether you are a Linux expert or just starting to tinker with your own code, Linode will be useful for you. A few episodes ago, we played with an implementation of OpenAI's GPT-2 where our excited viewers accidentally overloaded the system. With Linode's load balancing technology and instances ranging from shared nanodes all the way up to dedicated GPUs, you don't have to worry about your project being overloaded. To get $20 of free credit, make sure to head over to linode.com/papers and sign up today using the promo code PAPERS20. Our thanks to Linode for supporting the series and helping us make better videos for you. Thanks for watching and for your generous support, and I'll see you next time. Next time. Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Károly Zsolnai Fehér. In almost any kind of real-time computer games where different objects interact with each other, having some sort of physics engine is a requirement. Flags waving in the wind, stroking bunnies with circular objects are among these cases, and of course, not all heroes wear capes, but the ones that do require the presence of such a physics engine. However, a full physical simulation of these interactions is often not possible because it is orders of magnitude slower than what we are looking for in real-time applications. Now, hold on to your papers because this project proposes a new learning-based method that can speed up the standard physical simulations and make them 300 to 5,000 times faster. And then we can give it all the positions, forces, and other information, and it will be able to tell us the outcome and do all this faster than real time. Since this is a neural network based project, our seasoned fellow scholars know that we'll need many hours of simulation data to train on. Fortunately, this information can be produced with one of those more accurate but slower methods. We can wait arbitrarily long for a full physical simulation for this training set because it is only needed once for the training. One of the key decisions in this project is that it also supports interaction with objects, and we can even specify external forces like wind direction and speed controls. In some papers, the results are difficult to evaluate. For instance, when we produce any kind of deepfake, we need to call in people and create a user study where we measure how often do people believe forged videos to be real. The process has many pitfalls, like choosing a good distribution of people, asking the right questions, and so on. Another great part of the design of this project is that the process we measure how often do people believe forged videos to be real. The process has many pitfalls, like choosing a good distribution of people, asking the right questions, and so on. Another great part of the design of this project is that evaluating this is a breeze. We can just give it a novel situation, let it guess the result, then simulate the same thing with a full physical simulator and compare the two against each other. And they are really close. But wait, do you see what I see? If you are worried about how computationally intensive the neural network-based solution is, don't be. It only takes a few megabytes of memory, which is nothing, and it runs in the order of microseconds, which is also nothing. So much so that if you look here, you see that the full simulation can be done at 2 frames per second, while this new solution produces thousands and thousands of frames per second. I think it is justified to say that this thing costs absolutely nothing. I think I will take this one. Thank you very much. We can even scale up the number of interactions as you see here, and even in this case, it can produce more than 100 frames per second. Incredible. We can also up or downscale the quality of the results and get different trade-offs. If a core simulation looks good enough for our applications, incredible. We can also up or downscale the quality of the results and get different trade-offs. If a core simulation looks good enough for our applications, we can even get up to tens of thousands of frames per second. That costs nothing, even compared to the previous nothing. The key part of the solution is that it compresses the simulated data through a method called principal component analysis, and the training takes place on this compressed representation, which only needs to be unpacked. Compresses the simulated data through a method called principal component analysis, and the training takes place on this compressed representation, which only needs to be unpacked when something new is happening in the game, which leads to a significant speed up, and it is also very gentle with memory use. And working with this compressed representation is the reason why you see this method referred to as subspace neurophysics. However, as always, some limitations apply. For instance, it can kind of extrapolate beyond the examples that it has been trained on, but as you see here, if the training data is lacking a given kind of application, don't expect miracles. Yet. If you have a look at the paper, you'll actually find a user study, but it is about the usefulness of the individual components of the system. Make sure to check it out in the video description. This episode has been supported by Weights and Biases. Weights and Biases provides tools to track your experiments in your deep learning projects. It can save you a ton of time and money in these projects and is being used by OpenAI, Toyota Research, Stanford, and Berkeley. Have a look at this project they launched to make computer code semantically searchable, where, for example, we could ask, show me the best model on this dataset with the fewest parameters, and get a piece of code that does exactly that. Absolutely amazing. Make sure to visit them through wandb.com/papers, wandb.com/papers, or just click the link in the video description and you can get a free demo today. Our thanks to Weights and Biases for helping us make better videos for you. Thanks for watching and for your generous support, and I'll see you next time. Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Károly Zsolnai Fehér. In this project, OpenAI built a hide-and-seek game for their AI agents to play. While we look at the exact rules here, I will note that the goal of the project Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-minute papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér. This is a standard color photo made with a smartphone. Hence, it contains only a 2D representation of the world, and when we look at it, our brain is able to reconstruct the 3D information from it. And I wonder, would it be possible for an AI to do the same and go all the way and create a 3D version of this photo that we can rotate around? Well, this new learning-based method promises exactly that, and if that is at all possible, even more. These are big words, so let's have a look if it can indeed live up to its promise. So, first we take a photograph and we'll find out together in a moment what kind of phone is needed for this. Probably an amazing one, right? For now, this will be the input, and now let's see the 3D photo as an output. Let's rotate this around. And wow, this is amazing. And you know what is even more amazing? Since pretty much every smartphone is equipped with a gyroscope, these photos can be rotated around in harmony with the rotation of our phones. And wait a second, is this some sort of misunderstanding, or do I see correctly that we can even look behind a human if we wanted to? That content was not even part of the original photo. How does this work? More on that in a moment. Also, just imagine putting on a pair of VR glasses and looking at a plain 2D photo and get an experience as if we were really there. It truly feels like we are living in a science fiction world. If we grab our trusty smartphone and use these images, we can create a timeline full of these 3D photos and marvel at how beautifully we can scroll such a timeline here. And now we have piled up quite a few questions here. How is this wizardry possible? What kind of phone do we need for this? Do we need a depth sensor? Maybe even LiDAR? Let's look under the hood and find out together. This is the input. One colored photograph, that is expected, and let's continue. Goodness, now this is unexpected. The algorithm creates a depth map by
Я сколько чеснока-то накупил, когда его. Чесночная акция.
Itself. This depth map tells the algorithm how far different parts of the image are from the camera. Just look at how crisp the outlines are. My goodness, so good. Then, with this depth information, it now has an understanding of what is where in this image and creates these layers, which is, unfortunately, not much help. As you remember, we don't have now has an understanding of what is where in this image and creates these layers, which is, unfortunately, not much help. As you remember, we don't have any information on what is behind the person. No matter, because we can use a technique that implements image inpainting to fill in these regions with sensible data. And now, with this, we can start exploring these 3D photos. So, if it created this depth map from the color information, this means that we don't even need a depth sensor for this. Just a simple color photograph. But, wait a minute, this means that we can plug in any photo from any phone or camera that we or someone else took at any time. And I mean at any time, right? Just imagine taking a black and white photo of a historic event, colorizing it with the previous learning-based method and passing this color image to this new method, and then this happens. My goodness. So all this looks and sounds great, but how long do we have to wait for such a 3D photo to be generated? Does my phone battery get completely drained by the time all this computation is done? What is your guess? Please stop the video and leave a comment with your guess. I'll wait. Alright, so is this a battery killer? Let's see. The depth estimation step takes, whoa, a quarter of a second, in painting, half a second, and after a little housekeeping, we find out that this is not a battery killer at all, because the whole process is done in approximately 1 second. Holy mother of papers! I am very excited to see this technique out there in the wild as soon as possible. What you see here is a report of this exact paper we have talked about, which was made by Weights and Biases. I put a link to it in the description. Make sure to have a look. I think it helps you understand this paper better. If you work with learning algorithms on a regular basis, make sure to check out Weights and Biases. Their system is designed to help you organize your experiments, and it is so good it could shave off weeks or even months of work from your projects, and is completely free for all individuals, academics, and open source projects. This really is as good as it gets, and it is hardly a surprise that they are now used by over 200 companies and research institutions. Make sure to visit them through wnb.com/papers, or just click the link in the video description and you can get a free demo today. Our thanks to Weights and Biases for their long-standing support and for helping us make better videos for you. Thanks for watching and for your generous support, and I'll see you next time. Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér. Neural network-based learning methods are capable of wondrous things these days. They can do classification, which means that they can look at an image and the output is a decision whether we see a dog or a cat, or a sentence that describes an image. In the case of DeepMind's AI playing Atari games, the input is the video footage of the game and the output is an action that decides what we do with our character next. Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér. When we, humans, look at an image or a piece of video footage, we understand the geometry of the objects in there so well that if we had the time and patience, we could draw a depth map that describes the distance of each object from the camera. This goes without saying. However, what does not go without saying is that if we could teach computers to do the same, we could do incredible things. For instance, this learning-based technique creates real-time defocus effects for virtual reality and computer games, and this one performs this Ken Burns effect in 3D, or in other words, zoom and pan around in a photograph, but with a beautiful twist, because in the meantime, it also reveals.
Hey everybody, today we're going to be checking out Google's latest doodle.
Christmas.
Feliz Natal,
Feliz Natal.
Happy Holidays, boas festas em português e que a gente tenha um ano novo maravilhoso.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. From now on, our troubles will be miles away. Here again, as in
Мама. Да нет уж нет. На что? Нормально, значит, плохо, значит. А, ну нет, не надо, не смотри. Нет, вот нет, наоборот. А,
toothpaste brand claims their product will destroy more plaque than any product ever made. A politician tells you their plan will create the most jobs. We're so used to hearing these kinds of exaggerations in advertising and politics that we might not even bat an eye. These kinds of exaggerations in advertising and politics that we might not even bat an eye. But what about when the claim is accompanied by a graph? After all, a graph isn't an opinion. It represents claim is accompanied by a graph. After all, a graph isn't an opinion. It represents cold, hard numbers, and who can argue with those? Yet, as it turns out, there are plenty of ways graphs can mislead and outright manipulate. Here are some things to look out for. In this 1992 ad, Chevy claimed to make the most reliable trucks in America using this graph. Not only does it show that 98% of all Chevy trucks sold in the last 10 years are still on the road, but it looks like they're twice as dependable as Toyota trucks. That is, until you take a closer look at the numbers on the left and see that the figure for Toyota is about 96.5%. The scale only goes between 95 and 100%. If it went from 0 to 100, it would look like this. This is one of the most common ways graphs misrepresent data, by distorting the scale. Zooming in on a small portion of the y-axis exaggerates a barely detectable difference between the things being compared. And it's especially misleading with bar graphs, since we assume the difference in the size of the bars is proportional to the values. But the scale can also be distorted along the x-axis, usually in line graphs showing something changing over time. This chart showing the rise in American unemployment graphs. But the scale can also be distorted along the x-axis, usually in line graphs showing something changing over time. This chart showing the rise in American unemployment from 2008 to 2010 manipulates the x-axis in two ways. First of all, the scale is inconsistent, compressing the 15th-month span after March 2009 to look shorter than the preceding 6 months. Using more consistent data points gives a different picture, with job losses tapering off by the end of 2009. And if you wonder why they were increasing in the first place, the timeline starts immediately after the US's biggest financial collapse since the Great Depression. These techniques are known as US's biggest financial collapse. In the first place, the timeline starts immediately after the US's biggest financial collapse since the Great Depression. These techniques are known as cherry picking. A time range can be carefully chosen to exclude the impact of a major event right outside it. And picking specific data points can hide important changes in between. Even when there's nothing wrong with the graph itself, leaving out relevant data can give a misleading impression. This chart of how many people watch the Super Bowl each year makes it look like the event's popularity is exploding. But it's not accounting for population growth. The ratings have actually held steady, because while the number of football fans has increased, their share of overall viewership has not. Finally, a graph can't tell you much if you don't know the full significance of what's being presented. Both of the following graphs use the same ocean temperature data from the National Centers for Environmental Information. So why do they seem to give opposite impressions? The first graph plots the average annual ocean temperature from 1880 to 2016, making the change look insignificant. But in fact, a rise of even half a degree Celsius can cause massive ecological disruption. This is why the second graph, which shows the average temperature variation each year, is far more significant. When they're used well, graphs can help us intuitively grasp complex data. But as visual software has enabled more usage of graphs throughout all media, it's also made them easier to use in a careless or dishonest way. So the next time you see a graph, don't be swayed by the lines and curves. Look at the labels, the numbers, the scale, and the context, and ask what story the picture is trying to tell.
Меня тут жесткий просто был. Я тут так Он тебя понял, уже так нет. Ответ.
Today I'm going to be playing the song But Not For Me by George Gershwin, and this is the refrain, or the more well-known part of the song, and I'm going to be using the spread voicings, and I'll be playing the conventional chords, or the more well-known chords that most jazz musicians play. Then I'm going to play it a second time using the drop 2 voicing technique. Okay, now I'm going to play through it again using the drop 2 voicing technique, and I'll play it a little slower so you can see the chord positions, and then later I'll explain the chords I'm using and how I'm voicing them. Let's take a look at the scale tone sevenths in root position. This is the key of C now, and these are the scale tone sevenths, or the block chords built on C.